Hello, it's Wednesday morning, March 11th, 2020, and this is Hot Take. In case you missed it, a virus has spread from its epicenter of Wuhan, China. The city is on lockdown, and only essential personnel, medicine, waste, and provisions are allowed in or out. Viruses are found in almost every ecosystem on Earth and are the most numerous type of biological entity. Virology reared its head in 1892. Dmitry Ivanovsky showed that sap from a diseased tobacco plant remained infectious to healthy tobacco plants despite filters. Although they contain genetic instructions in form of DNA or the related molecule RNA, viruses can't thrive independently. Instead, they must invade a host organism and hijack its genetic instructions. They may represent genetic elements that gained the ability to move between cells. They may represent previously free-living organisms that became parasites. They may be precursors of life as we know it. Antibiotics cannot kill viruses because bacteria and viruses have different mechanisms and machinery to survive and replicate. The pithovirus awakened just a few years ago, but it is considered the oldest at 30,000 years. The current virus affecting a large majority of the world is called coronavirus. A new form of this virus is called COVID-19. I've also seen SARS-2. In humans, coronavirus infects cells of the upper respiratory and gastrointestinal tract and are responsible for about 1/3 of all common colds. Coronaviruses are named for the crown-like spike on their surface. Human coronaviruses were first identified in the mid-1960s. They are closely monitored by public health officials. The most publicized type of coronavirus is the virus that causes severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS. The virus that causes SARS is known as SARS-CoV. This virus first appeared in southern China in November of 2002 and was recognized as a global threat in March of 2003. During the time, SARS spread worldwide, infecting at least 8,000 people and killing 774. According to the World Health Organization, by late 2003, no new cases had been reported and WHO declared the global outbreak to be over. Presently, it is unclear whether and if so, under what circumstances, a SARS-CoV outbreak might reoccur in the future. An important lesson of SARS is that future emerging viruses might arise from any virus group. For example, prior to SARS, coronavirus had not been associated with any serious human disease. A novel coronavirus, COVID-19, previously referred to as 2019-NCOV, emerged in a seafood and poultry market in the Chinese city of Wuhan. The world is in the pre stages of an epidemic, I guess. I mean, words mean things, but how panicked should we be? Who do we trust, and where can you look? CDC is reporting this as an outbreak or epidemic, or, I don't know. What is the difference anyway? Epidemic refers to an increase, often sudden, in the number of cases of a disease above what is normally expected in the population in that area. Outbreak carries the same definition of epidemic, but is often used for a more limited geographic area. A pandemic is all of the above, but worldwide. Meanwhile, hyperendemic refers to persistent high levels of disease occurrence. So should any of these words be color-coded for our convenience so we can ingest fast food panic? Well, yes and no. The chart above is a representation of pandemics throughout our history, and as you can see, some are worse than others, and it can get really, really nasty. So if anything, we should be concerned when they use words like pandemic only based on the history of our civilization. COVID-19 is dangerous because it spreads mainly from person to person through close contact within about 6 feet. Respiratory droplets can be inhaled into the lungs, and the most contagious also have been showing the worst symptoms. The new or novel or SARS 2, whatever they call it, has shown transmission from non-symptomatic carriers. It can spread from contact with contaminated surfaces or objects as well. The virus that causes COVID-19 seems to be spreading easily and sustainably in the community of some affected geographic areas. It is also spread zoologically, meaning it can be spread from cats and camels and cows and anything else that has the letter C. Signs. Check yourself if you're experiencing respiratory symptoms, fever, cough, shortness of breath, and breathing difficulties. In more severe cases, infection can cause pneumonia, severe acute respiratory syndrome, kidney failure, and even death. If severe, it's a good idea to seek medical attention immediately. We can stop the spread of this disease. Obviously, containment and prevention are the core priorities. Prevent getting or giving by washing hands and cleaning surfaces. Hand sanitizer is highly recommended. Some have worn masks, and since it's considered infectious for 30 minutes while airborne, some of the more fashionable have created a barrier from inhaling or exhaling the virus. Fully cooking foods and avoiding public or common areas that show signs of spread are also obviously good ideas. If traveling, check with state and country websites, local officials, for alerts or bans. Obviously, staying out of affected areas will assist with prevention. Michael Osterholm, a self-proclaimed medical detective, states that this is just the beginning, and this should last for months and beyond. His book Deadliest Enemies from 2017 talks about SARS and MERS and has mirrored reality. He initiated a warning on January 20th that this is going to go worldwide, so birds, camels, cats, humans can spread variations of this disease. Additionally, this is not considered a seasonal model. Summer won't save you. The incubation period is about 4 to 6 days after transmission, and it's typically the worst and may require special treatment. This is considered to be 10 to 15 times more fatal than a basic flu. Obviously, things like obesity, smoking, high blood pressure, age have all become factors of infection and death. No vaccine currently exists, and about 5% will require hospitalization, and 1% will require ICU. With enough infections, this should slow down because others will develop immunity or resistance, and it will be okay for them. However, currently 2 to 3% in China are dying. It increases as well. It increases or doubles every 4 to 5 days. That's meaning that if there's 10 today, in 4 to 5 days there'll be 20, and then 40, and then 80. You get what I'm saying. Hospitals around the world are being built and renovated. Entire halls are being emptied and filled with those most infected. Ventilators and respirators are in short order. IV bags are insufficient. People are being traced back to an original carrier, like on a bus, taxis, or being in close quarters. Well, that rules out Chuck E. Cheese, guys. Those snot-nosed kids. Decisions are being made as to who they can let die. Nurses are significantly at risk. He estimates that in 6 months we could see over 450,000 deaths in the U.S. This is perhaps on the high end and has not been validated. Lower numbers suggest around 15 to 45,000 U.S. could die from this virus and its bilateral effects. He goes on to state that one of the worst pandemics was the Spanish flu, with a 3% mortality rate. This was a nasty bug because it hit 18 to 25-year-olds, considered the healthiest, with extremely strong immune system. Strangely, healthier people were more likely to get severe symptoms. I was stationed at Camp Funston on Fort Riley around 2007 as part of the training for transition teams. During World War I, nearly 50,000 recruits trained at the camp, commanded by Major General Leonard Wood. Soldiers were in close quarters in barracks and then followed onto trenches with lack of sanitation. 38 died, while infected soldiers carried from Funston to other Army camps in the States. 24 of 36 large camps had outbreaks, sickening tens of thousands. To maintain morale, wartime censors minimized early reports of illness and mortality. In Germany, the United Kingdom, France, and the United States, while most were saying this is a normal flu season in the fall of 1918, the medical community was blindsided and civilians left clueless. Not much was known about virology. Treatment was enemas, whiskey, bloodletting. It was common to see bleeding from nose, mouth, and ears, and people were turning blue due to low oxygen levels. In the first 25 weeks, it killed more than AIDS did in 25 years. Some analyses have shown the virus to be particularly deadly because it triggers a cytokine storm, destroying the immune system of young adults. Malnourishment in overcrowded medical camps and hospitals. Poor hygiene also promoted bacterial superinfection. This superinfection killed most of the victims, typically after a somewhat prolonged deathbed. It has also been claimed that by late 1970, there had already been the first waves of epidemics in at least 14 U.S. military camps. Additionally, it is postulated that a significant precursor was harbored in birds. It mutated and then migrated to pigs, which were kept near the front lines. A 2005 estimate put the death toll at probably 50 million, less than 3% of the global population, and possibly as high as 100 million, more than 5%. In the U.S., about 28% of the population of 105 million became infected, and 500,000 to 675,000 died, which is about 0.5% of the population. The majority of deaths were from bacterial pneumonia, which is a common secondary infection associated with the flu. The virus also killed people directly by causing massive hemorrhages and edema in the lungs. The flu struck an estimated 500 million people, some 28% of the world's population. American combat deaths in World War I totaled about 53,000, but about 45,000 American soldiers died of influenza and related pneumonia by the end of 1918. The above tale is horrific, and without clear information about symptoms and prevention, we could very easily fall to something similar. Although we are more educated and can use the internet for communication and businesses, the major issue we have today compared to 1918 is worldwide travel of humans, pets, and food. The Black Death was spread along the trade routes of Europe, and that disease killed at least 1 in 4 by lunchtime. Fleas that bit infected mice stowed away on a ship created an instant killer. Prior to this, an infection may affect the local population heavily, but those that survived created immunities, and if in contact with external communities, rarely infected enough to cause a catastrophe. There's a quote on Live Science that states, "The cases we're seeing with the emerging coronavirus is not that the children are not having any symptoms at all. They're actually having viral pneumonia. And that's because they're finding infected fluid in the lungs. But because their immune systems are so robust, it doesn't lay them out the way it would with an adult." A small study out of China suggests that the new coronavirus can persist in the body for at least 2 weeks after symptoms of the disease clear up. On the CDC website, it states the coronavirus causes more severe illness than flu. There are not yet any vaccines or therapeutics, and it can be contained, which is why we must do everything to contain it. Additionally, they state that we don't fully understand the phenomena. It may be because of differences in the immune responses of children compared to adults. One hypothesis is that innate immune response, that is the early response that is aimed broadly at groups of pathogens, tends to be more active in children. It is also being stated that within healthcare facilities, special respirators called N95 respirators have been shown to greatly reduce the spread of the virus among medical staff. People require training to properly fit N95 respirators around their nose, cheeks, and chins to ensure that no air can sneak around the edges of the mask, and wearers must also learn to check the equipment for damage after each use. Okay, this didn't go as quickly as planned, but there are current impacts beyond health. Stocks are down, summer concerts are being postponed, theaters are empty, vacations are being canceled. In some locations and under certain conditions, work, school, and travel are under temporary restrictions. Shutdowns are occurring as the rate of infection is increasing. Entire countries and cities are closing borders to restrict further outbreaks. Some would-be cruisers are still stranded on cruise ships in ports. We as a global community have not seen this type of action before. It causes fear and panic, and because of our past transgressions between government, media, and civilization, it's hard to trust anything anymore. What science and the medical fields are saying is this should be nearing the pinnacle in which we will all see the infections, restrictions, and overall panic decrease. This, however, is another major wake-up call to nearly everyone in this global community. We are not immune to everything, and the world can still smack us around a bit. That's not to say we should turn the other cheek or simply take it, but should prepare ourselves for future proclivities. Having enough in the blood bank, proper protective gear, more sanitizer, and vaccination preparedness can help curb huge loss and suffering. We are truly sensitive beasts, and never more apparent than when a microscopic ball of thorns sticks it to us. Stay hot. This is my hot take.
These are some new updates from Tuesday. First coronavirus death in New Jersey, in a man in his 60s from Bergen County. 761 confirmed coronavirus cases in the U.S. There are now 27 coronavirus deaths in the U.S., 23 in Washington, and 2 in California, 2 in Florida. 4,088 deaths, approximately, have been linked to the virus. It definitely exceeds SARS, which was a pretty big deal. about 16,000 confirmed cases popping up outside of China. 78 state and local public health labs in the U.S. Now have capacity to test 75,000 people. And additional cases have been confirmed in New York, bringing the state's total to 142 as of Monday. U.S. has approved about $8.3 billion in emergency aid. It has been confirmed in a dog. It was tested for a weak positive, and global mortality rate is about 3.4%. But for the most part, we don't even have the full numbers of all of that just yet. Italy is on lockdown, and it basically is one of the worst hit areas outside of China. It's got 9,000 residents, killed about 463 of them. Pretty amazing stuff. This lockdown impacts about 10 million people. Schools and universities, nightclubs, gyms, casinos, restaurants, public sports may remain open as long as patrons keep a distance of 3 feet between one another. Wow. This is getting rough. And then here are some numbers from outside of China. South Korea, 7,500. Iran, 8,400. Italy, seeing that's a huge number, 91. France, Germany, very similar. Spain, very similar to each other. Japan, about 530. US, 761. That's because we travel so damn much. And then Switzerland, Netherlands, UK, they're all kind of the same. Sweden, Belgium, Norway. Very homogeneous populations there. They don't move around much, and they don't typically receive a lot of outsiders to their thing.
Stay hot. This is my hot take.